Before we start, please hear a message from International News Today Network. Starting today, for every subscriber, International News Today Network will plant one tree to save our planet. Please help contribute in saving our planet by subscribing to our channel. One subscriber equals one tree. Thanks.
I have the honor to welcome to the United Nations His Excellency Mr. George W. Bush, President of the United States of America, and to invite him to address the General Assembly.
Mr. Secretary General, Mr. President, distinguished delegates, and ladies and gentlemen, we meet 1 year and 1 day after a terrorist attack brought grief to my country and brought grief to many citizens of our world. All the world now faces a test, and the United Nations a difficult and defining moment. Will the United Nations serve the purpose of its founding, or will it be irrelevant?
It's not the first time Secretary General Kofi Annan has heard the UN accused of irrelevancy. Right now, there are 60 nations fighting wars, and the UN has peacekeeping missions in 15 of them. Iraq has tarnished the UN, but Annan's got a much bigger problem: the Democratic Republic of Congo. The UN and the Congo have been linked since the beginning.
The focus was New York, where the future of the United Nations lies at stake upon the Congo issue.
We believe that the only way to keep the Cold War out of the Congo is to keep the United Nations in the Congo.
The speech is interrupted by a well-organized demonstration in the gallery. The stage is set for a test between the free world and the communist bloc, the most critical moment in the 15 years of the United Nations' existence.
"40 years later, a 5-year civil war in the Congo is coming to an end. The result of the war? 3 million Congolese dead. The United Nations is spending $600 million a year creating peace in the Congo. Whether it will work is uncertain. Hanging in the balance, the lives of 55 million Congolese. The UN's mission in the Congo is called MONUC. MONUC's frontline troops are military observers, MILOBs. MILOBs don't carry guns. They do get shot at.
In the first phases of the Congo mission, it was essentially an observer mission. And so we gave the impression that we had lots of troops, because we already had 3,000 troops, 4,000 troops, which looks like a big number, but which were there essentially to make sure that a helicopter would not be looted, that an oil depot would not be looted, protecting our own assets. But I think that a mission in a place like Congo that is only an observer mission, that's a very dangerous proposition politically, because the gap that you open between the expectations of the people and what you can actually deliver is just unsustainable.
The Congo has been fractured by the civil war. The western half, a madhouse, controlled by President Joseph Kabila. its capital, Kinshasa, will be the site of a transitional government. A 1,000 miles from Kinshasa and still outside government control, the Eastern Congo. The area is blessed with gold and diamonds, and cursed by those who want it. One eastern district is particularly dangerous. It's called Ituri. Although outwardly peaceful, the region is controlled by a dozen violent warlords. In Ituri, they make machetes out of car springs. They're the favorite tool of the Ituri warlords who traffic in minerals and death. If the UN is going to save the Congo, it will have to first save Ituri. New York. The UN's Department of Peacekeeping Operations, DPKO, constantly monitoring the situation in Ituri. The news from the ground is not good.
Who's chairing? Good morning, General Diallo.
Good morning, Ms. Derek.
I'm sorry that we're somewhat disorganized this morning. It's been a rough week on our side. But we understand that you're chairing the meeting this morning?
Yes,
Okay.
as you see. Okay, we had this morning an incident. Two of our MILOPs went out of their house to go to the spring for water. And they were attacked by a group of 8 individuals in civics, but armed with Kalashnikov, machetes and knives. But fortunately, the team leader who was driving accelerated and managed to escape. I think that as long as there is no agreement in Ituri, it will be very risky to have a military unit deployed.
Our understanding from talking to council members is that it's unlikely that we're going to get a resolution for another 2 to 3 weeks. And apparently, according to our interlocutors, so to speak, it's tied to Iraq. Some of the rumors are that the U.S. Congress sees the Congo as a French issue, and since the U.S. Congress is not very happy with the French over their position on Iraq, they're not prepared to do anything on the Congo until they settle Iraq. In the meantime, we will try to make the situation there as public as possible with the Security Council, with the SG, and in the press, so that if it does get out of hand, nobody can say that the UN didn't warn them.
In the fall, Ituri does not blow up. Just before Christmas, a code cable is received at UN headquarters. A formal Congolese peace agreement is finally ratified. There have been others. This one looks promising.
We have just been through a period where there was the role of MONUC on the ground, monitoring the disengagement. And the question now is, how do you establish the connections so that the international community is not perceived as a sort of a new colonial power? There is a core that is the heart of the peace process. Elections, security sector, rule of law, in essence. All the rest, it's important. There needs to be good schools, there needs to be a good health system and everything, and Congo needs everything. But it's not mission critical in the sense of a peace process.
Spring 2003. Peace in the Ituri was too good to be true. Despite enormous UN pressure, the ruling warlords refused to surrender their weapons. They crave instability. It's good for business. The Ituri schools closed due to increasing violence. The kids, easy prey for the warlords, given an AK-47, bullets, and food. What the warlords get in return? Ituri's gold. Kinshasa. The UN's MONUC headquarters is worried. If Ituri blows, the entire Congo could go with it.
Good morning, sir. Good morning, ma'am. To commence with the morning brief, we have a couple of reports, and first is from Bunia, where team has reported that there has been a considerable movement and increase in the number of Lindu combatants. Meanwhile, number of civilians believed to be Himas have left Bunia town.
Humanitarian affairs?
Yeah, and it's been fighting in Baraka between the Mai Mai and the RCDG, and there are apparently quite a lot of people who've been displaced as a result of that. We've actually received word from the Center for the Prevention of Genocide that they are also aware of the alleged massacres that are actually taking place.
In Uvira, situation stayed calm yesterday.
I think it's enormously important to understand the psychology of some of the people that were inside MONUC. The UN as a whole has paid a terrible price for the perceived failures of what happened in Srebrenica and what happened in Rwanda. We would do everything that we could to make sure that we didn't have another Srebrenica, we didn't have another Rwanda on our watch. And that was the key thing, that the UN couldn't take another disaster, another genocide while it was deployed in the area, no matter how lightly deployed, no matter how inadequately.
In addition to the warlords, soldiers from two neighboring countries, Rwanda and Uganda, roam the town. The two countries claim they're legitimately protecting their borders with the Congo, but they also want Ituri's wealth. They will kill for both.
By the end of March, early April, we were saying, please, members of the Security Council, please, international community, give us some time. MONUC had 4,500 people in this enormous country, 4,500 troops doing all sorts of things. We could not deploy ourselves into Ituri to try to prevent the massacres that we expected were going to take place.
April 3rd, Jacques Grinberg's worst fears come true. The village of Drodro, near Bunia, is attacked. Several hundred villagers, mostly women and children, hacked to death. The victims, they're of no strategic importance. They're minor pawns in the warlord wars.
Lançons enfin, dans l'ensemble, un message de paix, de réconciliation.
2 weeks post-massacre, the warlords signing a peace accord. No one believes them.
Et de prier pour nous pour que cet exemple impérieux soit le salut de tous. Les signataires sont ici.
The killings will continue. But someday, as in Bosnia, Kosovo, Sierra Leone, maybe there'll be war crimes trials.
Je suis le chef du bureau de la monarchie ici, donc à ce titre...
5 days later, a team of UN investigators heading for Drodro, site of the recent massacre. The investigation is the first step in ending impunity in the Congo.
Est-ce que parmi ces assaillants, il y a des enfants aussi, des mineurs qui ont pris les lances, les haches pour commettre aussi des crimes?
Oui. Des enfants qui ont participé activement au massacre et aussi des femmes. Il y a qui parlait les Kilendo, que tout le monde parle ici. Il y a qui parlait les Swahili, que l'armée parle au Congo et en Ouganda.
Vous voulez dire que ce sont vos voisins qui vous attaquent? Oui, puis ce sont d'abord les voisins qui sont utilisés par d'autres armées. Oui. Vous avez dit, ils ont brûlé leur maison. Qui a brûlé leur maison? Eux d'abord, ils ont commencé à se battre d'abord entre eux. Ils ont brûlé leur propre maison? Oui, ces gens-là étaient des ennemis même entre eux. Donc vous êtes habitant d'ici, non? Moi je suis habitant d'ici. Et vous ne connaissez pas s'il existe des choses communes?
Moi je ne peux pas y aller parce qu'en 1994 j'ai vu les massacres à Kigali et j'étais choqué, je suis névrosé maintenant.
Non, je sais. Ça va.
Non, j'ai perdu ma mère, je vais sortir.
Merci. Monsieur?
Nous sommes bien rétablis.
While Drodro testimony is being taken, a young girl, killed and mutilated. A taunt from the warlords. Investigate if you want. Nothing will come of it. And in a jungle hospital, more victims, the Drodro survivors.
Donc là, c'est le coup de machette. Oui. Quand on tuait votre enfant, vous étiez là, c'était devant vous que ça s'est passé, ou bien ils sont partis avec l'enfant quelque part pour le tuer?
C'était sur place.
Comment?
L'enfant était sur son dos attaché.
L'enfant était sur son dos attaché?
Oui.
Ok, merci. Bonne guérison, madame.
By day, the Ituri tribes often share a local food market. At night, they hunt each other. Further down the road, a village, Zumbe, guarded entirely by child soldiers, with arms supplied by the warlords. village is suspected of perpetrating the Drodro massacre.
Dans certains villages Emma aussi, les gens disent qu'il y a des combattants hindous qui vont aussi les attaquer la nuit, et ils prennent leurs affaires, ils prennent leurs bêtes. Est-ce que vous avez appris ça? Est-ce que vous aussi vous attaquez aussi des villages Emma?
Jamais de notre côté, nous faisons que l'autodéfense. Jamais nous allons les attaquer chez eux, non. Ça, ce n'est pas vrai.
Mais vous avez combien de personnes actuellement avec vous?
3000.
Et leur âge va de quel âge à quel âge?
15 Yule.
15 ans et puis
plus.
As they travel about the countryside, the UN investigators are protected by Ugandan troops. The Ugandans, it is suspected, helped the village of Zumbe attack Drodro. Summer. The months drag on. The Security Council is in a quandary over Uganda. Ugandan troops are keeping the warlords in line, but they, along with Rwanda, are also suspected of being behind much of the Ituri violence.
While there were some Ugandan elements behind some of the insecurity in Ituri, Uganda's presence there also provided a degree of stability. The Ugandans had agreed that they would withdraw from Ituri. The Security Council wanted Uganda out, and it was because of the necessity of pursuing the internal political reconciliation within the Congo. There was a fear that if and when the Ugandans left, Ituri would just blow up into chaos.
The United Nations has to be ready to quickly fill the Ugandan vacuum. Finding first world troops for any dangerous mission is difficult. For dangerous African missions, it's almost impossible.
The majority of the contributors of blue helmets at present come from the developing countries. Let me be clear, they cannot nor should not be expected to continue to shoulder this burden alone. We fully recognize that many armies are downsizing and that defense budgets are often dwindling. And finally, scars from experience in Bosnia, Rwanda, and Somalia have yet to heal. Notwithstanding, there is an equally legitimate concern that the credibility and viability of UN peacekeeping remains under threat.
At my level, we're discussing the possibility of how we could diplomatically get the Ugandans to stay without ever actually asking them to stay. At the same time, the Security Council very much wanted all foreign forces out of the Congo. What we did then was try to establish with Uganda a slow and measured withdrawal that would enable us to not only monitor that withdrawal, but enable us to, in some instances, fill the vacuum as Uganda withdrew. Uganda wouldn't accept that. They wanted the United Nations to publicly come out and ask Uganda to stay, which the United Nations would not and could not politically do.
Bunia Airport, May 1st. Uganda, as ordered, pulling out of Ituri. The Security Council pleading for countries to help. Only Uruguay accepts. So now, 750 Uruguayan guard troops are replacing 5,000 battle-hardened Ugandans. It's a very dangerous changing of the guard.
The Uruguayans had gotten half to two-thirds deployed. The UPDF, the Ugandan forces, started to depart via the airport. There was a day of quiet, and then immediately after that, the various militias came streaming into town.
As predicted, Bunia is transformed into a war zone. Much of the town fleeing into the forests. Thousands of others turning to UN camps.
They fled basically in two directions. One of them to the MONUC headquarters, which was in town, and the other one to the airport area where the Uruguayans had established their base. I think at one point we had more than 3,500 of these IDPs gathered around our headquarters, and another 3,000 or 4,000 at the airport. We were absolutely on the verge of a humanitarian catastrophe.
Food at the UN compound, running out fast. The water supply, cut. Cholera is reported.
At the same time, particularly I think it was the Lendu militia that started to attack MONUC. And with the concentration of IDPs around our headquarters, it became an enormously dangerous situation. Heavy mortar shell landed inside our compound, killing, I think, a half a dozen of the IDPs that were there and injuring a much larger number.
On the third day, MONUC forces, overwhelmed, retreat to their compound. The UN is losing its gamble. The warlords are unstoppable. A week after fighting starts, Bunia is a looted ghost town. UN staff and Red Cross workers starting the recovery of some 250 corpses.
The situation had become so serious that it was now serious time to think about deploying or asking for a multinational, robust force to re-establish some degree of order and normality in Bunia.
New York, never anticipating Bunia would fall. The big fear, the entire Congo peace process will collapse. And if the Congo goes, all of Central Africa is in jeopardy.
In peacekeeping, you are confronted to a kind of a dilemma, to look the other way and have to live for the rest of their life with maybe the notion that if you have really moved in, you would have made a big difference, or to move in, but maybe with the risk of failure. At every step, I'll need to convince the Security Council, and I'll need to convince the troop contributors. If I don't get it right, then it's the authority of the United Nations, it's the good name of peacekeeping that will be compromised.
During the Congo's 5-year civil war, the press was indifferent. Now, with new Ituri massacres, media attention shifts briefly from Iraq to the Congo.
This has been one of Africa's ugliest wars. Bunia is Congo's latest hellhole.
50,000 people are thought to have died just in that
It is a war in which children are victims and combatants.
Population continues to flee.
Not a nice place. A contingent of UN troops from Uruguay has been powerless to intervene.
One of the very important contributions of the Uruguayan deployed in Bunia, because they were there, they brought the attention of the world media, because you have had a lot of massacres in Congo where it's just too dangerous to have any journalist, any reporter, so you don't even know that they happen. It's very hard for politicians to say, well, we just have to look the other way. And so I think this change in public opinion has an impact on the politics of the Security Council.
Two weeks after fighting in Bunia begins, a brief lull. But military observers in isolated outposts are worried. Militia in the hills are preparing to attack the camps. As fighting in Ituri intensifies, refugees are fleeing to the capital, Kinshasa, squatting in buildings abandoned during past wars. Not far away, Parliament is being readied after years of neglect. But with fighting in Ituri, Parliament's opening is questionable. The Congo, tilting towards collapse. Jean-Marie Guéhenno, desperately looking for a heavily armed force to save Bunia. A force outside the UN. The French, still smarting from Iraq, one possibility to lead the force. But the French are clear. If they accept, it's only Bunia and the airport, and only for 3 months. With the French sitting on the fence, Monique nervous.
The French ambassador reacted by saying that no, there is no question of anyone dealing with Ituri. This does not concern Ituri. This is merely concentrated on Bunia, and that we are not here to resolve the problems of Ituri, etc.
The concept, as I understand it, and maybe I am absolutely wrong, they want to have a compact and manageable force in Bunia, which will consist primarily of something roughly around a battalion size of French troops, with a sprinkle of other troops to add legs to the coalition, and in a sense be thankful for a member state who is willing to come and rescue our troops, because otherwise the point was last week, and we all know that they would have to be withdrawn. We were very close to that.
I think you've heard our position. Our position as far as Ituri is concerned is very firm. The indications we have given you are not changeable. We are warning you about the situation in the entire Ituri. We are not here to be convinced that the problem in Ituri is limited to Bunia. Okay? Otherwise, whatever member states want to decide, whatever others want to decide, is fine and dandy. But we are going to give you the reports as we see it. We're going to analyze it as we see it.
But warnings, I'm very good about warnings myself, as you know, and you heard my warnings 2 weeks ago about what may happen in Bunia.
We assume that we were talking about a larger number than a battalion.
Thank you, and it's all my fault as always. Thanks very much. If there is nothing else to discuss, I am adjourning the meeting, and I don't want to adjourn on this very sour note, which is developing. 8:30 tomorrow, New York time. Okay, thank you. I mean, I don't like these acrimonious things. I don't like these acrimonious.
May 10th, Bunia. Urgent calls received from 2 isolated military observers in a town called Mangwalu. The Milobs, very scared. They want to be taken out. For 3 terrifying days, the Milobs wait. Extracting them, impossible due to intense fighting. May 13th, a helicopter finally dispatched to Mangwalu. Returning, empty.
Thank you.
3 days later, what everyone fears comes true. The deaths of the 2 Milobs hit Monouk headquarters hard. Rumors circulate. The rescue attempt was botched.
How's the mission doing?
They're okay.
They're okay, but a little bit disjointed.
We went that little room and we got a call from Mahagi on the sat phone, and those military observers were literally crying. They said, take us out of here. I mean, 2 persons in a location is...
There's still element of mission being somewhat dysfunctional. There is no security assessment in a proper way.
No
People
follow-up.
are thrown sometimes. These team sites were established in the most strange way. That's the reports I have. Now, when military observers were just sent without any support, any previous visit, and put in dangerous spots.
So Ayaka today, can you draft a cable in consultation with Francois Dereau of extreme, most immediate, of extreme concern on the part of this headquarters? That we want immediately by tomorrow a threat assessment to all personnel, civilian and military personnel, in the Northeast. You spoke to Germany yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
Can you speak to Canada today? Okay. Financial support would be helpful.
Something like
Although I don't think they have much money.
Eventually, there will be a high-level UN investigation into the Milobs' deaths. The report will be kept strictly confidential. The Congo. It's always been a difficult sell to the international community. The deaths of the Milobs don't help. But the crucial question remains. What's the worth of one failed African state?
Money.
Money, you said?
Money for the MNF. I think that's the key thing right now, right?
Frankly, there are two key things right now. One of them is money for this MNF limited deployment, and the other one is this big bell that the mission is sounding and that I think we all agree with, that Bunia is not enough.
You know, I don't think that we're going to get troops outside of Bunia unless we put our own troops out there, and I don't think we have the capacity to put our own troops out there. I don't think that our troops are capable, have the kind of equipment and training to do that.
I absolutely agree with you, but I think we have to not only go down on record, but just keep on thinking, is there any way that we can do something outside of the immediate environs of Bunia? Because large numbers of people are going to die. You've got at least 2 declarations from the armed combatants saying, we are ready to canton, where's the money to feed us and whatever.
Okay. You need to disarm them, and then you need to do something with the weapons. So there has to be an agreement of what we do with the weapons, and then we need to feed them and then get them into, you know, projects, food for work or training or whatever other kind of projects that we have for them. But then you won't get the money from the donors because they consider that feeding armed combatants.
Are there no other options?
We have a plan for Bunia and airport, and hopefully the multinational force is going to deploy there. But there is the rest of Ituri, and there are many ways in which the rest of Ituri could go badly wrong. And there we are caught in a kind of dilemma, because if we flag the issue too much, we might lose the hope that we have of a real deployment in Bunia. If we ignore it, it is just as bad, because we might be surprised by it and we will be misleading those who will deploy in Bunia. The dangerous scenario is a scenario where we have some improvement in Bunia, but then there's just a shift, a shift in the killings to other places. If the people are cynical and clever enough, they don't attack Bunia, no. They just commit horrors 40 kilometers from Bunia. Look at the international community, the French once again, and when it's... they
protect certain people.
They protect certain people, but they don't care about the others. The other flip side of the coin is that if Bunia is a safe place, and if things go badly in the rest of Ituri, instead of having 12,000 refugees, you can have 50,000, 60,000, 100,000. You can have a colossal Alagoma chaos developing. Yep. What I'm describing could happen. I think.
You know, if there's anybody who has an interest in you know, undermining the credibility of the MNF, then that's the way to do it. It's easy. So I mean, there's 1 or 2 things that can be done. One is to ask the French or whoever is coming with them to have a rapid reaction capability. They have the capacity to go in, you know, and hit very hard.
Yeah, that's why they need attack helicopters.
And pull out without casualties most of the time and without too many risks, and make a point, you know?
The killers are not a massive force.
That's right.
They are thugs on drugs who can be, scared and stopped by a relatively small professional force when things go bad, if that force is there quickly and decisively. In May, I decided, and the Secretary General supported that, to move toward engagement, because we felt that the risks of loss of human lives were just too high, and that maybe with the memory of Rwanda, the possibility did exist to convince the Security Council to do the right thing.
Will those in favor
May 30th, 2003. The Security Council accepts a French-led multinational force.
Please raise their hand.
The force might possibly save a Tory,
Those against?
but only in the short term.
Abstentions? The draft resolution has been adopted unanimously.
Attention, Bruno! Bruno, il y a de l'armement à l'intérieur!
June, the French-led force on the ground. In Bunia, unhampered by UN rules of engagement, the French confront the warlords. But in the hills, the murders, rapes, and kidnappings increase.
Qui a tiré? Hé, dégage! Papa, allez, calmez-vous! Retournez à ma proche! Couchez là! Couchez! Couchez les mains sur la tête! Couchez les couilles! Couchez là! Couchez! Les mains sur la tête, les mains sur la tête! Mettez les mains sur la tête! Couchez! Couchez! Couchez!
In 3 months, the French will pull out of Ituri. Then it's up to a UN Ituri brigade to secure the peace.
Since the French have agreed to deploy in Bunia only with a very clear time frame and a deadline, we have to be sure that by September 1st, our forces are rolling in and operational. And that's in the hands of the Council. And the Council in the hands of what will be the US decision. And there, every day that passes will make me extremely nervous.
The days turn into weeks. The cost of an Ituri brigade, tens of millions of dollars a year. There's only one country in the world with that kind of money.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, generals and deputy SRSGs.
The general left.
The generals have left, I can see. On Friday, as you're aware, together with several colleagues, we visited Washington and had a 3-hour discussion, plus myself, a rather bad lunch in the State Department with the interdepartmental group headed by Deputy Assistant Secretary of State for Africa, Bellamy, and they do appreciate considerably the work what has been done by the United Nations, both on the ground and in New York, but they would like to have a better feel as major financial contributor, obviously, and a political lever. What is the end game, both in Ituri and in the Congo as a whole? And when they see the proposed ceiling at 10,700, for them it's a real jump.
As far as the deployment of the brigade is concerned, and here I have no choice but to make a comparison with NATO in the Balkans. How is it that a mere brigade is being questioned for the UN? The same thing could be said about what you mentioned, Dimitri, as Sierra Leone. In Sierra Leone, we suddenly did agree to go to 17,500 because a disaster happened. So we should not wait here until the disaster is augmented, if you wish, because we do already have a disaster on our hands.
De conformidad con el entendimiento alcanzado en las consultas previas y de no haber objeciones.
The Americans, obviously, they are the biggest payer, so I mean, whenever we increase money, they will pay the bigger part of the bill. At the moment, it's clear that in the Council, what we need to achieve is to convince the US to make a decision quickly, because every day that passes means that our deployments are going to be delayed.
On the one hand, many of my colleagues were working to give the information necessary for troop contributors to put together the kind of troops that we would need for Ituri. My job was more on to try to convince the Security Council we had a viable plan for Ituri. And I think one of the problems with Council, and I think particularly with the United States, was that they did not see that there was really a political process in Ituri worth investing in. The U.S. told us, and I think that they had a legitimate concern, that they saw Ituri as a Somalia, and so our job really was try to convince them that there was a political process.
June, Meg Carey to Bunia. Her mission, find an exit strategy for the Ituri quickly, one acceptable to the Americans.
The council met yesterday in New York and have decided to give Monarch a technical rollover, which basically means no new mandated activities, just an extension of the date of the mandate until sometime in July. But the first implication is that we will only get a task force of 1 battalion and that we would not have any additional troops beyond 1 battalion at the current date of exit of the international force. And that has major implications for the work that we do in Ituri. So we have a lot of work to do to try to convince the people who pay the bills that it's worth their investing in it. There was a time that I did feel that none of the countries of the world who could make a difference really cared, and that nobody was really seeing the lives that were being wasted, and it didn't matter to them. You did feel personally somewhat responsible because you felt, what am I doing wrong that I'm not being able to convince these member states that they need to provide the troops necessary to save these lives? You can't pull these people out now because then it'll make the situation worse for us. And you also felt responsible for the United Nations staff that were putting their lives at risk in Ituri. And there was a great deal of pressure. It is once again a unilateral action taken by the government.
The best, perhaps the only chance of stabilizing the region, something called the Ituri Interim Administration. Whether it can expel Ugandan and Rwandan-sponsored fighters, that's anybody's guess.
Le grand problème, ce sont les groupes armés. Et de notre côté, évidemment, on peut prendre des contacts avec tous ces groupes, ça c'est vrai, et les amener, mais en les prenant à juste valeur.
Il y en a 6 et qui sont tous armés. Tous ont des parrains en Ouganda, ils ont tous le même parrain. Et c'est ça ce qui rend les choses tellement difficiles. Alors, il y en a qui venaient acheter nos richesses avec de l'argent, mais d'autres ont trouvé que c'était plus astucieux. On vous donne des armes et on prend les richesses. C'est comme ça qu'en Ituri, il n'y a aucune usine qui fabrique les armes. Est-ce que vous pouvez imaginer le Rwanda et l'Ouganda qui n'ont pas de l'or chez eux, mais depuis les dernières années, ce sont les plus grands producteurs de l'or et du bois, pendant qu'ils n'en ont pas. Ça vient d'où? Ça vient chez nous. Il y a des individus qui en profitent, mais leur État en profite aussi. Et comment est-ce qu'ils le font encore pendant que nous, on se bat? Ils sont derrière. Alors, quelque part là-bas, il faut faire pression sur les pays voisins, l'Ouganda et le Rwanda, qu'ils cessent de pouvoir toujours s'ingérer dans le problème du Congo en général et de l'Ituri en particulier. Nos relations avec le gouvernement de Kinshasa, malgré tout ce qui s'est passé en Ituri, le peuple ou la population de l'Ituri se considère encore et toujours comme être congolais. Ça, c'est dans le cœur de tout le monde. Même les groupes armés, ils savent qu'ils sont congolais.
What Madame Vaweka is up against is a warlord named Thomas Lubanga. Lubanga controls Bunia, He's backed by Uganda. He has a degree in psychology, the support of hundreds of child soldiers, and blood on his hands.
Most peace processes that we're dealing with in Africa and beyond, the heads of factions, to a greater or lesser extent, are warlords and have very mafioso type of tendencies. You have to deal with them. You may not want to deal with them, and they may have committed all sorts of human rights abuses, but unfortunately you have to deal with them because they're the ones with the power.
What do these military leaders want?
I think if we talk about UPC, the leadership of UPC, definitely Lubanga wants to play a national role in the Congo, using Ituri as a pretext for it, you know. So he has very big ambitions. So now I think what we have to see is to see how best we can, you know, try to see at national level what we can give him, even something very small, yeah. If you continue discussing with him, we can say, yes, you can play a role at national level.
What happens to Lubanga after he gets to national level?
He will leave everything and go.
Okay, what happens to UPC after Lubanga leaves?
It will finish. You have to exert pressure on Lubanga. Maybe Security Council can issue a statement or something like that, naming them, name and shame. So I think this is one of the aspects of the problem you have to look at.
If we name and shame, will that put Monarch individuals in any danger for reprisals?
I don't think so, if it is done at the level of the Security Council.
So that's the step.
And now the carrot is to try to bring him on board.
Okay, and the reason that the fighting started in Jugu and Mangwalo is because this is the resource-rich area.
Yes. And that's also a place where the two tribes are sort of rubbing
It's
together.
it's very significant that our Milobs have been assassinated in Mangwalo.
It wasn't just robbery that went wrong.
No, definitely not.
No, I think they saw something they shouldn't have seen. That's my take on it.
While Meg Carey looks for an Ituri exit strategy, the Bunia jail is renovated. Local judges will soon be reinstated. Rebuilding any societies starts with the rule of law.
There was no functioning indigenous rule of law. The quandary that we were in is that we could not hold people indefinitely without turning them over to a local judicial process. We could not also arrest people. We could detain people, but we couldn't arrest people. And so what we needed as quickly as possible was for the local police, even if it was symbolic, to begin working.
Now, on Civpol, an integrated Congolese police force for Ituri is part of our exit strategy. And it's also part of our strategy to strengthen the Ituri administration and to get it to be doing the work for itself. I've read your cable for options for Ituri, but I really have to stress that anything that you send to us in New York has to be realistic, based on present capacities, and based on a thorough political analysis of what is acceptable to the parties. Whenever you make a presentation to Mr. T-Top or myself, start with needs, not with your desires for what you're going to deploy. I want to know the needs on the ground. That's what I want to know.
Bottom line, at this stage, everything is needed because there's no...
Everything is needed means nothing to me, Stefan. I'm a political affairs officer. I know nothing about police. I need details. What does everything mean, okay? You have to treat me like a child who knows nothing, okay? And explain it from A to Z. Can I just, with all due respect, make a suggestion? Never say you can't do anything. We will find ways of doing it if it has to be done, okay? Let's just find ways of doing it. Okay, so, hello. So basically we've got to start for purely political reasons.
and not because of substance or this is the right thing to do, but purely for political reasons, I would like to start training a police force now. Okay, no, it's okay. I'll call Mr. Titov tomorrow. Before you hang up, can you dial my home number? Thank you.
Late June. The French declare Bunia weapons-free. The Bunia child soldiers now join the thousands of fighters camped in the hills, waiting for the orders to attack.
La guerre est finie? La guerre est finie.
That Sunday, the people of Bunia celebrate the town's liberation. The government in Kinshasa declares the war officially over. The fighting may be over, but the peace, it's not even close. 2 weeks later, the newly appointed judges, fearing for their lives, will flee Bunia. Within hours of arriving back in New York, Meg Carey drafting the Ituri exit strategy. The plan? Several thousand additional UN troops to secure Bunia after the French leave, and $150 million to pay for them. In a few minutes, Jean-Marie Guéhenno will try to convince the Security Council it will all work.
Can you tell Mr. Guéhenno for me that I'm bringing up the Security Council for 2 seconds? I need it now. Just email it. You got it, Asif?
Show you the spots where I put in the added.
Fine, thank you. Okay, you sent it to me.
Yeah.
Possibly to reinforce
Although
detachments in North Kivu. Ça va?
Okay, although this is primarily an allegation of the MLC, have we any monarch?
They've apparently confirmed it.
Fine.
However, the RCD has put forth 3 demands that the DRC government... Can you take the message from me, please? I'll take it. Hi. Okay. It's 11 pages.
He said 5.
In the midst of 2003, there is a window of opportunity, and it's like stars aligning themselves. There's a combination of factors. There's a post-Iraq factor, that is the sense that the Security Council has to demonstrate that it can deliver and that it is not focused just on Iraq.
37 floors down to the Security Council. Jean-Marie Guéhenno's made the trip 100 times before. He knows council debates are for public posturing. He's already made the private phone calls to nervous embassies. What he doesn't know, will it work?
The Secretary General himself is in close contact with Colin Powell, with Condoleezza Rice, with the President himself. So there are contacts at top level from the UN and from other countries which have good relations with the US and which make the case for MONUC. The African countries tell the non-African members of the Council, come on, do you care about Africa or don't you? And if you care, how could you question that 10,800 troops is too much for Congo, a country the size of Western Europe?
One of the things that we used on council members informally was the guilt. If we needed to withdraw, and the Secretary General would have withdrawn that battalion if need be, he would have had to. And if it had been a bloodbath, then it would have been on the shoulders of the international community. Unfortunately, the press sees the international community as being this blue building in New York, which is the UN. And so it's the fault of the UN, or it's the weakness of the UN. They don't sort of extend that to it's the weakness of member states who don't give the UN the capability to do something.
To succeed in these tasks, it is critical that states in the region act cooperatively to support the process of bringing peace and stability to the people of the Democratic Republic of the Congo.
The Security Council finally gives MONUC the money for an Ituri brigade and a Chapter 7 mandate, allowing the UN brigade to shoot to kill.
Mr. Solana, the United States would like to thank you.
Chapter 7 comes with a package of troops in terms of numbers, in terms of determination, and also a package of political commitment of key players to put the pressure on all those who can make a mess of the situation if they so decide. Mm-hmm. We have to make sure that the troop contributors are prepared to draw the consequences of that. There's a clear understanding that they're not getting off the hook by giving us Chapter 7. It's not a favor that they're doing us. It's a responsibility. It's a responsibility that they're taking.
Responsibility too, in terms of that arms embargo and stopping the arms flow from Uganda.
Exactly.
They have to take that responsibility.
Yes.
Only they can.
That is the package.
That's the package.
Fall 2003. The Congo River once again open. But the weapons embargo isn't working. Arms are traveling from Ituri down the Congo, spreading violence to neighboring provinces. September 1st, on schedule, the French-led multinational force leaves Bunia. At the same time, the newly arrived UN Ituri Brigade, made up of Pakistanis, Bangladeshis, and Indians, takes control of Bunia. This time, the UN Brigade is, by anybody's standards, a robust force. Almost immediately, the UN Brigade is tested. The warlords are probing for weakness. But with a Chapter 7 mandate and the will to use it, Bunia is stabilized.
Ne bouge pas! Ne bouge pas! Fais attention! On va te tirer si tu bouges. C'est ta femme?
Oui. Et mes enfants.
Tout ça.
Voilà, vous.
Vêtements. Et ne t'inquiète pas, d'accord?
Simultaneously, the brigade, with attack helicopters from India, starts extending its perimeter into the hills once owned by the warlords. Kinshasa. The Parliament of Reconciliation finally convenes. But it won't be easy. Armies from two of the vice presidents have recently been trying to kill each other. And there have been numerous plots against the life of President Joseph Kabila.
No first world country is going to save the Congo. The Congo is going to save the Congo, and the Congolese will save the Congo. And in terms of the national political process, there are some key issues. And they are difficult issues to get over. But it's not impossible to get over with sustained support.
October. As MONUC provides security, the first class of the Bunia police, the one Mekere wanted, is about to graduate. In the class, cadets who not long ago were trying to kill each other.
Pour tout le monde. À droite. Droite.
What is happening in Ituri is at the forefront of what could be happening in the country as a whole. We already have the first nucleus of the integrated national police force that has been set up in the town of Bunia and the training that's been done there. So it seems to me that sometimes if you tackle the toughest problems in a concerted and adequately resourced way, and you make real progress there, it becomes a beacon or a model, or at least a precedent for what can be happening elsewhere.
The risk, in a way, is that as things look better, and they are indeed better, the sense of and the pressure, the sense of imminent risk is no more there, which is a good thing because it reflects progress on the ground, but which is a dangerous thing because that progress is not so solid that there is no need for continued very strong engagement.
Throughout the fall, the Ituri Brigade continues moving outside Bunia. Mungwalu, site of the murders of the Milovs, is particularly dangerous. There's a gold mine here, gold to buy arms. But even in Mungwalu, things are starting to change.
J'insiste sur le fait, je crois que maintenant tout le monde l'a compris. Et c'est une bonne chose, ça va faciliter le travail et accélérer le processus. Le temps des groupes armés est terminé. D'accord? Parce que ça fait 3 ans qu'elle essaie d'aider les Congolais à résoudre le problème, et que le Congolais semble faire tout ce qu'il faut pour pas que le problème soit résolu. Donc peut-être que maintenant on a des opportunités, peut-être qu'on a des chances de réussite. Mais la communauté internationale seule ne pourra pas réussir si les Congolais ne se prennent pas en main et s'ils ne font pas preuve du sens des responsabilités. Ou partout où tu vas, à Washington, à Paris, partout les gens sont prêts à donner des chèques. Ils disent, ouais, mais attendez, mon chèque il est signé, mais j'attends. D'accord ? Voilà.
Despite what their leaders may do, the Congolese child soldiers will not turn in their guns in the coming months. No one has figured out an incentive that works. Every day, an old diesel brings kids from the countryside into Kinshasa to beg and steal. Each week, some of the kids perish under the train's wheels. Others die more slowly, of hunger or despair. If the Kinshasa politicians and the international community don't give them a future, and soon, there are plenty of Ituri warlords who will. In the following months, the violence in Ituri does not stop. Not far from Bunia, the village of Kacheli is attacked in the night. 65 people killed, including 40 children. In the fall of 2003, the UN itself becomes a target. Several more Milobs are killed. But the worst predictions have not materialized. A massacre on the scale of Rwanda has been averted.
She's on his way. Thank you. Oh, so we got movement. Yeah.
It's been a mixed year for the world's peacekeeper.
Just called.
The Security Council failed to stop the war in Iraq. But Haiti, Burundi, and Liberia, amongst others, are qualified successes. And the Congo, a country no one wants to think about, it continues its painful march towards national elections.
Thanks to the, as part of that, as terror prevention funds. That's amazing. Oh, thanks.
Excellencies, we now see with chilling clarity that a world where many millions of people endure brutal oppression and extreme misery will never be fully secure, even for its most privileged inhabitants. Once again this year, our collective response to events of this type in the Democratic Republic of Congo has been hesitant and tardy. History is a harsh judge. It will not forgive us if we let this moment pass.